Hi, everyone. It's Deborah Hamilton. I'm so glad you're here tonight. I am talking about something that is hey, Sally, hey, Rose, very near and dear to my heart. You are here to be part of the wonderful MAAP community that allows us to talk about things that are very important for our pets going forward, because it is something that you have to make a plan for. You have to navigate that journey that your pet's going to take if you can't care for it long-term or short-term. So tonight we're going to talk about something we've talked about, losing pets for a certain evening. They're way back in a few months ago. And tonight we're not necessarily going to talk about losing a pet. However, it is on the spectrum, because if you are making a plan for your pets and you're addressing the needs of your pets, then what are you going to do if something occurs with your pet and they become ill? And there are so many wonderful, Valarie Adams was here one evening and we talked about the fact that she is in the hospice care industry. So we were talking to her about hospice, which is so important. And tonight we're going to talk about how you put that in your plan. Rose is going to put the link for the February workshop in the chat, so all of us can share it. It's going to be an interesting and wonderful event because it's going to bring all new things to the fore. It's going to handle people who have pet dogs and people who have show dogs. What happens if you are getting a divorce and your husband and you co-own the dogs? How's that going to move forward? So that's going to be part of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about frozen sperm and how to make sure that it doesn't get lost in the frosty bank. And also things that are going to matter to you regarding the care of your pet. But tonight is one of those nights. So I'm going to check in with everyone and see how everyone's doing. I know that Sally is freezing. Athena and Roxy are not, because they have lovely coats that Audrey gave them. However, how is it up there? Sally, it's pretty cold and icy.
It's pretty cold. They're saying negative 24 to negative 30 Friday and Saturday.
Is that wind chill, I hope, and not really the temperature?
That's with the wind chill.
Oh, thank God.
With the wind chill, but oddly, the girls walked 11,000 steps today. They generally walk 5. I don't know why. And they're eating 2 dinners instead of 1. So I don't know what's going on, but they seem to love the cold weather and they're both sound asleep.
And they're my dogs at one point in time. And I love the cold weather because it's cold here. It was 35 degrees this morning here in Morehead City, North Carolina. And it was cold and I was thrilled. So the girls must have a little of my blood still in them, that they love that cold weather. So I'm glad. I know that you and Gordon like cold weather. Don't love cold weather. However, I'm so glad to hear the girls are doing well. How about you, Connie? How's everything going?
Well, I am almost as cold as you first thing in the morning. This morning, when we got up at 6:45, my cell phone said 36 degrees here in the South Bay of Los Angeles by the Pacific Ocean. So, we're almost there. And as you can see, I am still in warm clothes. And pardon me, tonight, Casey and I have our regular obedience class in a big park 15 minutes from here. And it's going to be freezing like mad.
Hilly.
And still wet from our latest rain. We're now up to about 13 inches. Yay!
I know.
Greater Los Angeles. So we're very happy about that.
Absolutely. These are the times that we want rain. Absolutely.
You bet. But a girlfriend of mine who's on our National Breed Club board with me, and I chatted today around noontime. She is in Dallas. She and her husband live in Dallas. She has Wheatons, and they are in the middle of ice. She has not been able to go out of her house for 3 days.
That's what happens here in North Carolina. They get ice and nobody leaves their house. They were forecasting ice. I will never forget last year, and we got everything ready so we could go out and we could drive. And we were laughed at by everyone at the hardware store because they knew we were Northerners, because we would think to venture out in the ice. As opposed to North Carolinians who, if the weather is bad and there's ice, you stay home till it melts. So we now know not to think we're going anywhere because our driveway will be clear. However, the rest of the roads that you might want to drive on are not, so it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I understand. Dallas was hit really badly. A colleague of mine who's going to a horse show in Ocala actually changed her flight from Dallas to Houston and made it. Because she saw that the weather was really going to be bad in Dallas and decided, I'm not going to try to see if I can ice skate down the runway. I am going to give up the ghost and go to Houston. So yeah, it is, that's another one of the D's, right? Delay due to the disaster of weather. So we really, we have to make plans. And she was traveling with horses. So I'm interested to see if she was having someone drive them or what. I'm sure somebody was driving them because they're big percherons, so they're not something that's going to go under the belly of the plane.
huge horses.
Yeah.
But I believe my friend Janet said that they were really worried about, even though they have underground power lines, they were worried about the big transformer stations blowing out, and I think about 250,000 people in Texas are now without power in all of this.
Yeah, one of my friends is without power. Yeah, he lost power. It's interesting because people don't presume that it's going to get that cold, and now they don't presume it's going to get that hot so that it overheats in the summer. So they're getting cold in the winter and then overheating in the summer. So it's really something you need to plan for, because if you lose your heat, you're going to have to figure out how to keep yourself and your pets warm, especially if you have lizards or birds, things that are really temperature.
Yeah, cold-blooded. Yeah.
Things that are temperature sensitive, you really need to figure that out. So I just like to start the conversation on hospice care because there was a wonderful program that I posted on Facebook from Mary Gardner. If you aren't friends with Mary Gardner on Facebook, you should be friends. She started along with Dr. McVetti, the group Lap of Love. And Lap of Love has people all over the country who help you create this wonderful hospice care for a pet that may be diagnosed with a disease that's, short-term, long-term, but debilitating. I've had colleagues who have used Lap of Love for kidney disease dogs, for cancer dogs, for dogs that have different life-threatening issues. So they're a really wonderful, wonderful group. And Mary Gardner posted something today about making sure that you know how to treat your pet in hospice. And of course, the light bulb went on over my head because, okay, so I know how I want my dogs to be treated in hospice. I want them to be made comfortable. I want them to remain pain-free. I want to have all the options laid out in front of me so I can choose what to do. And then I want to make the choice that's best for my dog, not best for me, which all of us know is the most difficult thing to do because we want to keep our dogs with us. And sometimes that isn't something that we can do. I know that Sally and I have lived this. I've lived it twice. Sally lived it, I think, twice as well, because I think Darla also became ill and needed hospice. I'm almost sure. My brain is foggy today. However, I've had several dogs that I've had hospice care for before it was something that was a thing, and that I let go because of things that occurred. So you really, when you're making your plans for your pets, we have the A, address the needs of your pet. Then you want to make sure that you address those needs in life. Okay, they get 2 cups of dog food a day, they get a vitamin, they get their heartworm on the 1st of the month and their flea on the 15th of the month. They can't eat turkey, it makes them get raging diarrhea. I mean, whatever it is that you're going to share with someone when you're addressing the needs of your pet, should also include addressing the needs of your pet when something happens. Sally and I have had long conversations about next steps because the girls are 12 and 13. They're walking 11,000 steps a day, so we're not anticipating on having a difficult conversation anytime soon, but we both know that it's always about the girls. So I'm going to check in with everyone, starting with Connie. In your plan, did you put forward what it is if God forbid something happened to you and someone had your pets?
Actually, no, and I do need to do that, and of course, when we have your workshop in a couple of weeks, I will definitely add that. Fortunately, in all my years of owning and breeding dogs, I have never had one cancer patient, knock wood, so that I have not had any kind of a long-term illness. Fortunately, my kids have gone relatively quickly when they have gone. Actually, I take that back. One of my Wheatons, because of taking Rimadyl for a herniated disc in his cervical spine when he was training for his rally advanced, and he really messed up his neck jumping. He was put on a very short course of Rimadyl by one of my longtime vets. But of course, that drug is known to cause cancer in labs and other dogs. And he developed this Wheaton of mine about 5 years later, did develop multiple tumors in his liver. So at that point, he was starting to vomit and have diarrhea and all kinds of GI issues. So I just put him down at that point. But the fine line between a long-term illness and hospice care, and when your dog tells you it's time to go, is a real tightrope that you have to walk with your vet. And I remember one of my vets, who has since retired, said to me a long time ago when I was putting down my 23-year-old calico cat, who was the oldest patient in their practice, this is the last kind thing you can do for your animal. Yes, when you make the choice to euthanize, right?
Yep.
However, one of my sisters who lives in the Bay Area and has had Goldens for decades is right now keeping a 13-year-old golden girl of hers alive with an inoperable tumor on her trachea. And she's having breathing difficulties, and Sophie will probably have to be put down soon. But Pat, who is a retired registered nurse, has kept her going for the past year or so since she was initially diagnosed. So she has been providing hospice care for Sophie in her own home.
Because she's a medical person. Yep.
Right. If you're trained to do it, you can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's really interesting that vets now, and some vet techs, because our guest that night, Valarie Adams, is a vet tech. They really can create that protocol that you can use to make sure your pets live a wonderful, normal life until they don't. And a lot of this occurs with chronic diseases like kidney issues, because a dog can be diagnosed with kidney issues and maintained on food and medication where it lives a relatively normal life. It's just that that other shoe is going to drop one day because of the kidney disease, and you have to be aware and prepared for it. And there are other Addisons and von Wildebren and all the things that are sometimes hereditary in a breed, sometimes unfortunately its own. I mean, we lost Bammy because of a hereditary issue in the breed. So these are things that we have to decide. Is the quality of life of our dogs the same? They've got the diagnosis, they're the same. I know that with my Daisy and my Gibbs, Daisy broke her leg with bone cancer, so there was no saving her unless I cut her leg off. And for me, that was something that was all about me and not about her, because I couldn't really sit down and tell her, by the way, I'm cutting your leg off and you'll feel better in a month or two, but then you're going to die in a year or two anyway. But I just decided not to do that. And with Gibby, he had it in his spine. So I had 2 cancers that were a nightmare. And then I'm going to let Sally talk about Darla and Dulcinea. But I have to tell you that Dulcinea lived a phenomenal life for the time period she had between diagnosis of bone cancer in her wrist and when we let her go in the wonderful flower bed next to the house, because Sally and Gordon just they did hospice on their own. They re-equipped their house in a way that made it almost impossible because Daisy broke her leg slipping on the wood floor. And Sally and Gordon have beautiful wood floors throughout their house. So they turned their house into a yoga gym with yoga mats all over the floor. So Dulcie would never have the opportunity to slip and fall. So she lived a lovely, wonderful life for a long time. I saw that Susan came back. Susan, how's everything with you and Maggie?
We're good. Maggie's been using our biomat, and that's nice and warm and comforting. I'm hoping at some point she'll give up her barking, which I don't know if you heard it a little earlier, but we get that all day, every day, and kind of tired of it. But
I know.
Yeah, this is a great topic, though, and I appreciate your bringing it up. I celebrated my other dog yesterday. It was would have been his 24th birthday, and put a perpetual memorial in Rainbow Bridge, but I didn't know about hospice care for dogs, and he had cancer, hemangiosarcoma, and it was really, he did have a leg amputation. I look back on it now and wonder if I did the right thing with that, or, so.
We never can second guess ourselves. We do what's best at the time with what we know. We make those choices with our hearts and our brains, but mostly our hearts. And so if, the decision you made worked for him, and then God forbid that decision has to be made with someone else, you might make the same decision or a different decision, because it's always personal. It's always with the heart of the dog in mind. As Connie said, it's the last most wonderful, loving thing you can do. I always, because I'm a hard-hearted B word, if they wouldn't survive in the wild, then I don't do this extraordinary thing. So if a dog had 3 legs in the wild, they probably wouldn't live. So I don't ever profess to cut a leg off. However, there are so many dogs. We've had Irish setters, because unfortunately it's really prevalent, bone cancer in Irish setters. We've had several dogs who've lived 3-4 years post-surgery. So in their case, it was wonderful. And I absolutely would chop a leg off in a nanosecond if it was nerve damage due to, say, getting hit by a car or something happened and they had nerve damage, because then they don't have the risk of cancer recurring. I think the risk of cancer recurring in hermengio actually is one of the worst. We lost Phoenix to hermengio. He had the tumor removed twice. And the 3rd time it recurred, we said, enough's enough. And he said, enough's enough. So he went on a complete national park tour for a month. And then when Susie, who owned him, came home, I co-own him, he was wonderful. And then one day he wasn't. And she looked at him and he looked at her and she said, okay, let's go get that McDonald's hamburger. And they did. And then she let him go. But you always know your own dog. You always know what's best for your own dog. And if you're going to put it in your MAAP plan, which is, I think, is almost without a doubt one of the most important, address the needs of your pet, make sure you understand that the person who's your caregiver needs to know. You need to see if they're going to abide by your plan, and they're going to make the decision based on the information they have. So you have to be okay with that. It really is something that is totally independent of what we would want to do if we're not there to do it. We can guide, we can't require, we can guide. It's not like you're going to sue them if you get out of the hospital after you've been unconscious for 6 months and one of your dogs was diagnosed with bone cancer and the person put it to sleep. You can't sue them because they didn't follow your protocols in the MAAP plan. You can just hope that they will do what it is you want them to do. And usually, because we have such a great conversation with our caregivers when we make the MAAP plan, it isn't something we did over dinner, over a glass of wine, over the telephone. We've actually had a conversation that our caregivers know exactly what we want to do and will do their best. And we know that that is the ultimate test. They will do the best they can given the information they have. And I know, Sally, you've been through this because it really was huge hospice care for Dulcie and then for Darla.
Dulcie, Darla, Buffy, and now Athena. But I just redesigned the house so that they won't slip and fall, and pay attention to their reactions. And actually, Jill, that I babysit for, right, she has cancer also. And Jay her owner had knee surgery yesterday, and they've been taking great care of Jill, and she had a tumor on her rear end, and they went to look at that and it seemed okay. And then Sunday he went to church. He goes, she's not eating. And I said, well, check her out after church. And she wasn't eating and she was drooling. And they went to the vet and they'd missed a tumor in her throat. And so he was with her on Sunday, and his favorite vet tech was there. And of course the vet was there, and she transitioned. And then the next morning, Jay went in to have his surgery at the hospital. And I thought, and everybody's going, so sad. It's so sad. And I said, what a blessing. He got to hold her. His favorite vet was there. The vet tech that he likes the best was there. The office was closed. It was a Sunday. Nobody was there. I said, what a way to go, having everybody you love with you. And then now I just said, how are you doing in the hospital? And he said, I miss Jill. I go, yeah, I know. I said, we were just up checking the house. I go, the girls could smell her. She was, but it's just, you have to make everything perfectly clear. And you have to watch and listen to your dogs. Like when I had Buffy, the dachshund, she's so short that we actually put like foam rubber and dog beds all over the entire living room so she could never jump, because of course she wanted to be on the couch. And I was terrified she'd jump off the couch and break something. So it became sort of like, I don't know, a children's jumping ball gym or something. So, but not everybody wants to do that. And when Dulcie first got sick and I took her to the vet said, you can take her to Colorado right now. That's where you'll get the very best care for this cancer, and they will amputate her leg, and it'll be the best job you get anywhere. But you actually have to drive her, and you have to leave today. Or you can go to the cancer center. And so I thought, well, we'll go to the cancer center. And we did that with Dulcinea. And we're faithful. We went every time they told us to go. We went through the drugs, the radiation. Her little leg turned white.
She had a beautiful wristed jewelry on.
Yeah. She had her Assisi loop on, and he said to me, if the cancer spreads to her lungs, that's it. We can do nothing else once it gets to the lungs. And so that eventually happened, and she was euthanized at our home. But having gone through that experience, I would never do that. I personally would never do that with a dog again. I would let the dog live out their life. Yeah, from my own experience, I did that. But now I've had 3 other dogs with cancer, and I wouldn't do that again. But I'm lucky enough. I work at home, so I can provide the care at home, and not everyone would do that. It's a big time commitment and redesigning your house.
Yeah, and quite frankly, they do redesign their house. And I have to add that Buffy had her mangio, and we removed her spleen. We thought we got it all. And within about a year, she had it grow back. And it was really interesting because Sally was kind enough to let me come and be there when we said goodbye. And Buffy climbed in between my legs with her head on my belly, and just went to sleep. And then she went to sleep. But her belly looked like she had swallowed a basketball, because hermangio is a really difficult disease, and you can remove it. You can hope for the best. And it was interesting because there were 2 dogs that I had. So I don't have cancer in my line very much, but the ones I've had have been terrible. So I had 2 that had issues with their spleens, and when they opened them up, they were full of cancer. And I'm a firm believer that, once you open them up, the air is to it. And I don't know how you feel, Connie, but the air is to it. It's going to just, if it's there, it's going to take off. So for 2 of them, it was. Now, in my MAAP plan, it says what Sally said she was going to do, which is if they're diagnosed, and there's a way to encapsulize it and take it, I might do that. However, if there isn't, then, and if it's aggressive, I am going to let them run at the park, and I'm going to let them swim in the ocean, and I'm going to let them, chase bunny rabbits. And then when they can't do that anymore, they let me know they can't do that anymore, then I'm going to let them go, because it really is all about them. And it's very important for us to remember it's all about them. But these hospice groups are so great because not only do they help you titrate the medication and the care you need to put together, like Sally's house being a yoga studio, they help you do all of that. They also help you understand when the pet's life is not what you would want it to be. And sometimes I remember I would come home from something, I'd be gone for 3 or 4 days, and maybe some of you have had this happen as well. You're gone for 2 or 3 days, somebody's watching the dogs, you come home, and there's something that's not right. Something's not right. You see something. The biggest thing for me was I went to Judge Sweepstakes in New Orleans for 4 days because I stayed with my friend and we looked around New Orleans. I came back on a Sunday. I left the house on a Thursday, came back on a Sunday. I come back and I look down at Caitlin and I go, my God, you're fat. How could you be fat? You must be pregnant. And then it flipped in my brain that my husband had let the dogs out with the boys 8 weeks earlier. And we had hoped they were pregnant, but of course, both girls were in season, because after I said, Caitlin, my God, you're so fat. You look like you're pregnant. And then of course, boom, my light goes on. Yes, she was. And then I said, well, if you're pregnant, then Polly's pregnant. And I look at Polly and she's a beached whale as well. They both popped while I was away, and I'm looking at them going, holy Toledo. And I had about a week to get ready to have 24 puppies right before Thanksgiving. So my husband has been called in the Irish setter world, the person to bring into the room when you're trying to get a girl pregnant that you can't, because he will do it in a matter of seconds. Not he himself, but just let him be with the dog and the male dog and the female dog, and they will get pregnant because he's able to do that. So these kind of things are the kind of things you need to plan for. You need to plan for that your dogs, if they're in season, go to a special place, or at least the person who knows not to have them bred without, thinking about the consequences of breeding or the benefits of breeding. It really is important to put these directives in your MAAP plan. And not just the directives on they like this red ball and they like that squeaky toy and they're heartworm, but if God forbid my dogs are diagnosed with some disease that is life-threatening, I would like to do this, and then spell it out. And we'll be doing that in February. And I don't know if any of you know this. Rose put it up in the individual chat to alert me because I'm a nincompoop. But this is National Responsible Pet Owners Month, February. So that is why, now that I know, we are having our MAAP community workshop during this time, because if you want to be a responsible owner, then you really need to make a plan for your pet. And I think I said last week, and I'm going to reiterate it this week, there is a move afoot, which I think is really good for shelters to start helping foster pets. And Connie, I don't know if you've heard this. It's been part of some of the AKC's work and some of NPR's work, but there are several shelters and shelters really that want to help people who have housing issues or job issues and need to leave their pets at a shelter, which usually if you leave your pet at a shelter, you have to relinquish the pet. And there are several pilot programs now being tried where shelters will foster those dogs for up to a month or 2 months until you get back on your feet, which makes it so much smarter for the dog and the shelter because the dogs are going to rotate in and out and the people will come and help and take care of them. So these are things that we really need to know about and put in our MAAP plan so our pets have the care they need going forward. So I know this is a little bit of a difficult topic, making sure that you can and know about hospice, making sure that in your plan, if you want your dogs to be treated by a certain hospice group or a certain hospice person, there's a lot to learn, and we're going to talk about it during our workshop because there's Lap of Love, there's Valarie's group, there's a bunch of groups that will really help you navigate that journey, which is heart-wrenching. However, as with humans, you really want to make it as comfortable and as pain-free as we can. I mean, that's what we're seeking when we give our pets the best care known to man while they're with us. So Susan, any last thoughts about hospice care and things that, you know, were important that you heard tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic to talk about, and having gone through 2 dogs that, you know, I knew had terminal illnesses, and it was really a grueling time dealing with that situation, heart-wrenching, and my son was not well during that whole time as well. And so if I had known there were people that could have helped me, supported us, that would have made a difference.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, the bottom line is you have to look at the big picture, which includes your family dynamic, and your desire, your ability to be able to care for an animal. So if it, and please never think, well, I can't do that, and I'm a terrible owner because I can't do that. No, that's not it at all. You have to do what you can do, and your pet understands and your pet loves you. So there's really no reason to go to extraordinary means. I think my number one issue is to have care credit right there at the front desk so that you can put yourself into huge debt trying to save a dog that's terminal. I really, you know, if it's kidney disease or if it's von Willebrand's or if it's a bunch of other things, cancer, there are things you should do and that you can do to give the dogs quality of life going forward. And then there are things that, you know, because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. I mean, it really doesn't, as Sally pointed out. Dulcinea went through radiation pretty well. My Raisin went through radiation really well. So did my Merlin go through radiation very well. It seems to not affect them. And by the way, in pets, they do not give curative amounts of chemotherapy or radiation. They give palliative amounts of radiation and chemotherapy. So they don't really want to cure it. They try to get good margins, and that's what they do. But as far as the chemotherapy or the radiation, it's usually just palliative. And if you want to know if it is or isn't, make sure you ask your vet. Connie, how about you? What are your takeaways?
Well, you know, as I indicated, for me, there's a very, very fine line between you know, keeping your dog going in palliative or hospice care versus, you know, looking at their quality of life, the kind of dog that they were up until, you know, they did get sick, even as seniors or geriatric dogs or cats. and then really making a choice that is the most compassionate for them. I mean, in the cases where my animals have died of acute terminal illnesses, where they'd gone downhill within the space of a week or two, then that's a very easy decision to make. But a long-term terminal disease is a lot tougher.
Yeah.
And again, you have to put yourself in the animal's shoes.
Right.
And not just think of, oh, I can't stand to lose this animal. You have to think of the most merciful thing to do for him or her. So for me, that's the most important criterion. It's when you look in their eyes and they're telling you it's time to go. It is time to go.
It truly is that they look at you.
They do.
There's a Supreme Court decision on pornography where I think Rehnquist said, "I'll know pornography when I see it." I think that's the judge who said that. And I always say to people, you will know. They will look at you and you will know they've lost that glitter. And that's what Susie did with Phoenix. He looked at her and she said, "Wow." And I have to tell you that Daisy gave me that look in no uncertain terms, as did Gibby, as did, Buffle climbs into my lap and as much as to say, "Oh, thank God," and goodbye. And it was, it was heart-wrenching for Sally and I, absolutely. However, it was definitely her time on her terms. And really, that's what we need to make sure we relay if that's what you want to do. It really is important. Before I reach out to Sally for last words, I just want to point out, it was Potter Stewart who said it. Thank you, Rose. She is my go-to person. The link for an article about this from the Washington Post is in the chat, as well as the link for Lap of Love if you want to learn more. And when you do Lap of Love, if you Google Lap of Love, all the other people will come up as well, because everybody's doing this now. It's one of the biggest and most expanding caregiving situations in veterinary medicine because of two reasons. One is people want to provide pet owners with a loving situation. And veterinarians really get burned out from euthanasia. They really do. It's really hard for them. So to be able to, it's a double-edged sword for them, because they've taken care of your cat, Connie, for 23 years. And it was as emotional to let that cat go for you as it was for the veterinarian who'd taken care of it for 23 years.
The entire practice was in tears when we put her down.
And it's really, really hard. And you can think about that emotion and then having to go into the next exam room with a client with a new puppy or a new kitten, right? And starting that whole thing again and again. It just is something that some veterinarians have thought, I can't do it. Everything is so stressful, I can't do it. It's not because they don't want to be there for you, but give them the grace to understand that it is really hard for them to do this all day as well. It really is hard. Sally, last thoughts.
I think that another thing that ties into all this is when you let your pet transition, who is with you or what other pets are with you. Because when I had to let Buffy go, and of course Deborah was with me, I removed the other dog from the room, and that dog looked and looked for Buffy, and we had to walk down to the park. We had to go into my car. We had to go through the whole house. So the dog knew Buffy was gone, but that's a tough one for me. If you have two, as far as other family members or children, or other dogs or cats, if I don't know what the procedure should be, if they transition and then you let them come in afterward, or what that solution is. But it wasn't the right situation when I let Buffy go and I removed the other dog, and then Buffy was gone. She went away. And then she was gone, and the other dog looked, I would say for a week, she looked for Buffy everywhere. So that's also part of this discussion.
Yep. Presence of mind would have had me think that we should have let Athena down to see Buffy, because they've done studies with African elephants that they actually come and grieve the loss of a member of their family. And they have found that horses too, especially wild horses, come and grieve the loss of a family member, and really look for the family member if they don't get that opportunity to grieve the loss. And when they're captured, the wild horses, and split from their families, they grieve the loss of their families, and their families aren't dead. They're just in another pen somewhere. So that's probably even worse. They can hear them, but they can't see them and be with them. I think I learned, and I think Sally and I learned together, that we should allow the other dog to see the other dog once they're gone. I don't know that I would want the dog in the room as we were transitioning one dog to another plane. But I do think that the kinder thing would have been to allow Athena to say goodbye to Buffy and to know that she passed, because they're pretty smart animals. They know.
Very, very.
Yep. And I know that Bammy went at the vet, so there was no way to do that. But
And she went suddenly. I was,
Right.
as you know, I was preparing
You
to
weren't
pick
even
her up,
there.
and suddenly she
Right.
went downhill in the middle of the night, and I couldn't even get down to see her.
right. So
I mean, that has torn me up to this day.
oh yeah, and it does. I mean, I remember leaving Daisy overnight with her broken leg at the Allen Medical Center, and I beat myself up every day because I left her for probably 10 hours, not with me. And those last 10 hours were in a cage at the Allen Medical Center. True, she was receiving a lot of pain medication, but still, I left her there. And I think that, we can do that. And Gibbs, I really beat myself up for, because I brought him to see a vet who was an idiot. And he was there for 8 hours. And they did nothing. And then I took him home, and the next morning we let him transition too, because of his inability to stand up. The spinal cancer for Gibby affected one side, so his right legs wouldn't work. So he tried to stand up, and the left legs worked really well, but the right legs did not work. And the vet said, no, I can probably do something. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. So we let Gibby go. And I've never let my other dogs see them, but I think after Sally and I experienced Buffy, and then Sally explained what happened with Athena, I think from now on, I'm going to really make sure that my dogs see the loss of the other dog if they can. If they're at the vet's office, then that's not necessarily possible. But if you use hospice and they allow the dog to transition where they are, then allowing the other dog or cat or bird or horse, well, maybe not birds, but horse, come and see the loss of their companion will make it easier. They are a lot more resilient than we believe they are. They really do feel things, and we really have to make sure that we care for them in a way that allows them to transition in peace, and then allows those they leave behind, including their canine and feline friends, to transition as well. Because otherwise, as Sally so eloquently put it, Athena was really lost, looking for Buffy. Where could she be? Where could she be? It really is important. And I can say, and Connie, I'm sure you observed it too, when the dog doesn't come home from the vet, the dogs look for it.
They do. They absolutely do. And of course, I've always had multiple animals. And when the missing family member does not come home, it's usually a week before the others calm down. And they are frantic looking for the missing animal.
Yeah, I mean, we all feel disappointed when we aren't there for someone we love who passes away, but we do like to go and mourn and recognize and say goodbye and give them our love. So let's do that for our pets as well. Again, February 18th and 19th, we're going to do our MAAP workshop. I know that people who have built a MAAP plan and paid for the MAAP plan before are going to get an invitation. Everyone else who's starting out fresh will have to sign up, and make sure you come and join us, because it's going to be a wonderful weekend. And until next week, I'm Deborah Hamilton. You are a member of the MAAP community, and you are so welcomed. And Kiss all your babies for me, Athena and Roxy, Maggie, and of course, Casey and Patsy, because we love you guys and we take good care of our dogs by making our MAAP plan. Until next time, this is Deborah Hamilton. Take care.